Good evening, guys. It's the 14th of June. There's chances that you might know this guy. Less chances that you might know this guy. Most of you would definitely not know this guy. And even if you're not into football, you should know about this guy. The main players for the contenders, four of the contenders in Group A of the 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia, which begins today in the Luzhniki Stadium in Moscow. And the first match of the tournament is going to be between Saudi Arabia and Russia. No host has ever lost the first game of a World Cup before, but Saudi Arabia will be hoping to extract exactly that kind of upset on Russia. My name is Suyash Upadhyaya, and I'm going to be taking you through all the biggest matches of the World Cup, of this World Cup, because that's what I like to do. I like to talk about football, I like to start discussions about football, I like to spark discussions about football. So anything that I'm going to say in the next 10 minutes, if you agree with it, you disagree with it, let me know in the comment section below, and we're going to break it down, we're going to go through it, and let's see if I can manage to convince you, or you can manage to convince me of your views. But hey, that's what we're going to be doing every day for the rest of the World Cup this time. Now, previewing the first match of the World Cup between Saudi Arabia and Russia, let me just tell you who those guys were who I showed you initially. That right there is Alexander Kokorin, who is one of the main strikers of the Russian national team. Unfortunately injured for this tournament, is not going to be taking part for Russia. Luis Suarez, of course. The teeth give away a lot, don't they? And those teeth have been used for various activities in the past, which me as a Liverpool fan does not need to be reminded of right now. We have Mohamed Salah right here, which me as a Liverpool fan definitely should be reminded of, because he's had a great season playing for Liverpool in the Premier League, and he's going to light up Group A along with Saudi Arabia, Russia, and finally we have Taisir Al Jassim of Saudi Arabia, who I just showed to you in that caricature below. It's going to be a recurring theme. I'm going to be showing you a lot of these caricatures over the tournament as I continue to preview all the matches. But coming back to Saudi Arabia versus Russia. Now, this is not exactly the biggest match of the tournament. In fact, both teams are the two lowest ranked teams in the World Cup this time. Russia is ranked at 70. I'm praying for the day when India reaches a ranking of 70, because work certificates or work permits for European clubs require the player to be above the FIFA ranking of 70, depending on which country he comes from. It might seem an ambitious target for India to be ranked 70 in the world, but for a country like Russia, which actually has a huge heritage of footballing past, it's not the most impressive ranking. Surprisingly, Saudi Arabia is ranked 3 places higher than Russia. They're ranked 67. In a tournament of 32 teams, you'd ideally want to see the top 32 ranked nations in football compete for the biggest prize, but that's not how it works according to the FIFA rankings. But with just a few hours to go now, let me walk you through the Russian team now. It's not exactly a good sign if you have to call upon a 38-year-old retired defender to slot in as centre-back in your defence. Clearly, your team is crippled with a lot of injuries, and that's what's going to have with Russia and Sergei Ignashevich, who's actually been pulled out of retirement to come to play in the World Cup in his home tournament. Now, this might not be a bad thing, because Ignashevich has a lot of experience in the past, and he's a veteran defender. In fact, if he starts today, he could be breaking the record for the oldest Russian to represent the country, breaking the record of their legendary player Lev Yashin before that, who was 36 years old, and Ignashevich is 38 years old if he takes to the field today. So that's something you should keep an eye out for and see if that happens. But largely, Russia haven't really had a good run up to the tournament. In fact, they haven't won a competitive game since October. They've lost 7 games in a row, and they qualified by virtue of being host nation, like India qualified for the Under-17 World Cup last year by virtue of being the host nation. So definitely there is pressure on Russia to perform, but whether they can do that is a whole different story altogether, because neither the bookies are giving Russia a chance, nor are the pundits, nor is yours truly. Maybe Russia has a chance for to get a result against Saudi Arabia later in the evening today. But I think the large part of the Russian population will be happy if they manage to get out of the group, which also has Egypt and Uruguay apart from Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia, on the other hand, have had a sort of mixed run up to the tournament. They've changed their coach 3 times, their manager 3 times in the last 8 months. You had, in fact, funnily, let me just get the name for you right here. The current coach of the Australian team, Bert van Marwijk, was actually the coach of Saudi Arabia before this. And before Bert van Marwijk, you had a gentleman who goes by the name of Eduardo Bazga, who was interestingly coach of the United Arab Emirates for 3 months and spent even less time as coach of Saudi Arabia because he was sacked. Sort of this passing the parcel and juggling happening between those two Gulf nations. So he lasted even for a shorter period of time in the kingdom than he did in the Emirates. So not a good sign for those two coaches. Before the current coach of Saudi Arabia, Juan Antonio Pizzi, who is actually an Argentine football legend. Not exactly for the national team because he represented Spain on the international level, but he's got a lot of experience, played for Barcelona, played for Valencia before this, and he's made the Saudi Arabian team into quite a strong unit. They've had mixed results again leading up to the tournament. In fact, they've just come off fresh from playing 3 friendlies against Germany, Italy and Peru respectively. Peru, they fielded largely an experimental side, so they had quite a heavy loss, but against Germany and Italy, the scoreline remained 2-1. And for the scoreline like 2-1 against a European country, for an Asian country like Saudi Arabia, is pretty big. They're going to be taking part in their first World Cup since 2006, and it's a World Cup after all. Teams really do raise their level when it comes to the World Cup. Every team is playing at 120%, so there are no easy games in the World Cup, which is why I don't think it's going to be an easy game for Russia today. Russia will be forced with some early pressure by Saudi Arabia because Bert van Marwijk, like I mentioned earlier, who is the coach of Australia, adopted a very pragmatic approach with Saudi Arabia before this. Did I say Saudi Arabia before that? I meant Australia. Yeah. He adopted a really pragmatic approach with Saudi Arabia. And Juan Antonio Pizzi is actually sort of given the players more freedom. They're not afraid to attack. They're not afraid to play to their strengths. They're actually very good going forward, but they don't convert many chances, and that's something the Russians will look to capitalize on as the game goes on. Because as the clock keeps going on, if it's 0-0 at halftime, and as much as the game goes on, I pick Russia to pip Saudi Arabia in this game because they're playing on their home turf. They have home advantage and they'll also be pumped. They're playing in the World Cup after all. Listen, no matter how bad a run of form you're going through, if you're playing a World Cup in front of your home fans in your home country, if that doesn't give you motivation, if that doesn't give the Russian players motivation, I don't know what will. But so that was sort of how the teams are going to be sort of lined up today and will be looking to approach the game. I suspect Russia will be a little more pragmatic because they'll be playing to their strengths. Unfortunately for them, Alexander Kokorin, their main striker from Zenit St. Petersburg, has been injured for the rest of the tournament, so he's not going to be taking part. But the hero who I believe can make the difference for Russia in this tournament is Fyodor Smolov, the 31-year-old striker. 28-year-old striker who plays for Kuban Krasnodar. Could make the difference. As far as Saudi Arabia are concerned, now we have a couple of really key players in the form of Taisir Al-Jassim, who actually scored against Germany in Leverkusen in the last game when they went down 2-1, like I earlier mentioned. You have Al-Sahlawi, who actually again hasn't scored a goal for over a year now, but is one of the most accomplished strikers in Saudi Arabia. He's one to watch out for, but the main player, in my opinion, is going to be Fahad Al-Muwallad. He is the midfielder who runs the entire team. He passes the ball forward, he collects it back, mops up, picks up a few tactical fouls as well, which is important in a World Cup because tactical fouls actually allow a team to break play and allows the opposition to sort of lose momentum. So that's what Saudi Arabia are going to try and do a lot today. They'll get stuck into Russia, get under their skins, try and frustrate them. But realistically, if you ask me, it's going to be a 1-1 between Russia and Saudi Arabia today. I don't know if this is going to go down well. After full time, we'll only see. Either I'm going to get it spot on, or I'm gonna get it completely off what I actually said. But hey, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to spark a debate, a discussion, and would love it if you guys can join in and let me know your thoughts on how you think this game is going to go. First game of the World Cup. It's the biggest football carnival in the world, and I, for one, am really looking forward to it. 10 seconds to go for my 10-minute previews, and that's the rule I'm setting for myself. 10-minute previews, no more, no less. So I'll catch you guys around the time of the next game. See you.